Good afternoon, Senator Fanfara, Senator France, Chairman Rojas, and don't see Chris Davis, Representative Ranking Member Davis, and distinguished members of this wonderful committee in which I had served for 6 years, I think, and now I'm sitting here across you all testifying in front of this committee for the first time. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I know you've called my names a few times. I apologize. I was up in public health, and I rushed down from that meeting to come down here. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to just briefly testify on two bills, and I know well aware of where we are in terms of the status of the finances of our state, where we are in terms of our budget, and to have an ask in front of you, I know how difficult it is going to be. But regardless of that, I want to just start the conversation, and I hope as we move this process, you will consider looking into these various issues, regardless of the fact that we are in very difficult budget times. I just testified in front of the Insurance Committee regarding the premiums for long-term care. As you know, as you're well aware of, the premiums for long-term care insurance have escalated. People have not been able to afford their premiums anymore because of whatever went into the calculation. At the end of the day, those calculations don't hold water anymore, and because of that, the rates have increased 40, 30, 50, 60%, and we still don't know. I had the good fortune of meeting with the commissioner earlier today to discuss with her what are we going to do about the premium increases as far as long-term insurance is concerned. We are an aging community, and as we live longer, obviously we want to make sure we have adequate insurance to cover us as we all age. And my request for you to consider is that the premiums that are paid into getting long-term insurance, whether one could consider impartial or as much as we can in getting them an exemption as far as the tax is concerned. So in my bill, in House Bill 6556, an act establishing a credit against the personal income tax for long-term care insurance premium payments. So it is an ask of the committee. It is an ask given the climate that we are in. I'm well aware of that. But also on the other side are people not renewing their insurances, A, and B, are scaling down the benefits significantly. So I would like you to consider that. Do I know what the fiscal impact is going to be? I do not know that. But I would hope as we continue this conversation, we can look into that. And briefly, I would also, I'm here in strong support of Bill 6558, once again, an act that is exempting Social Security benefits from the personal income tax. We want our seniors to stay in our state. We do not want them to leave us. And as you know, on fixed income, they do feel the impact of the cost of living in our state. So my request is to consider exempting their benefits from personal tax as well. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and I want to thank you once again for reaching out and calling me several times, and I appreciate that, Representative Davis, very much for reaching out to me, and I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions, comments from committee members? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Representative. We've waited just to hear from you today. I'm somewhat familiar with the market that you're speaking about because in my profession over the years I've been certified for long-term care insurance in the state of Connecticut. My question is your proposed credit on only the Connecticut Partnership certified long-term care policies, or is it on any policies that are approved by the Commissioner to be sold in the state of Connecticut?
My personal I mean, I would look at any policy that is stored in the state of Connecticut. That is the one I would look at, because ultimately it impacts us. It impacts the residents who are in our state. So I would say that would be where I would want to hopefully begin. But at the end of the day, as we move this conversation, obviously I'm not sure where it is going to end, but that is the intent. That is the hope.
Thank you very much. Also, would just reiterate your information about the escalating cost of that long-term care in the state policies in the state of Connecticut, and I'm not sure what we can do about that. It's an actuarial issue, and there's many companies, as you know, that have pulled out of the market. So those that remain take on the burden of everything that they've assumed. So thank you so much for your comments.
Thank you very much for saying that, because I have a friend of mine, a couple, and I think many years ago, I don't know how many years ago, for each of them they got a $10,000, and that's what they paid. That's a premium that they paid, one-time premium for life. So as you said, the actuarials, I'm not sure how that calculation went into, and that's it. That's the only time they got to pay. And he tells me, even recently, about a month back, he checks with that company ever so often, to make sure that they're still solvent, and that when he needs that services, that those services will still be provided. Because it's difficult to realize and hard that, gee, my goodness, I may not be covered anymore when you really need the coverage, with so many companies not in this business anymore for obvious reasons.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Representative Wilson. Senator Boucher? No?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative, for being here to testify on two very important concepts. I have a question on each. First, on the long-term care, and as you've said, this has been kind of a troubling area of insurance, oftentimes sold without really making the proper calculations and the longevity, and some outstripping their ability to be covered with the funds that are in there. Would you say that we've had other proposals to deduct payments on healthcare costs for a family? I've had one family that actually made less than the healthcare costs that they had in any given year, and they were asking for a deduction for their state income tax, versus now the long-term care proposal and deduction. So what would you say to those folks that are asking us to also consider deducting their cost for health care, the expenditures they have, and medical expenses during the year, versus a long-term care premium?
Thank you, Senator Boucher, for asking me that question. I've been wrestling with that too, because as a state, and we have said this over and over again, are we picking winners and losers? And obviously, we do not believe in picking winners and losers. So it is a very difficult decision to come to, as to who are we going to give credit to and whom we are not going to give credit to is troubling. Ideally, I would like to give both groups, because obviously they're not able to afford it, and they're at the risk that they could be dropping their coverage, which is very serious, because if they drop that coverage at the end of the day, you and I are going to pay for it one way or another indirectly when they land up in the emergency rooms and things like that. So would I include them as well? I definitely would. But once again, I'm very conscious, as you are, and we are also fiscally responsible as to how are we going to be able to afford this. And maybe as this conversation moves on, maybe a percentage in ladder-like form for both the group that I'm proposing and the one that you had in mind as well.
Thank you for that. The second question I have revolves around a tax, not taxing Social Security payments in Connecticut as a way to keep our senior citizens here. In the same light, we struggle between giving or eliminating or phasing out the inheritance tax versus giving a not taxing our Social Security payments. And we have similar I think, conflicts and debates on which is more important, which would be more advantageous, which would be more likely to keep our senior citizens here. Would it be phasing out the inheritance tax, or is it immediately reducing or eliminating the tax on pensions? And by the way, I might add that that proposal to eliminating the tax on Social Security is an idea that has been brought forward on the Republican side of the aisle, and now it's on the Democratic side of the aisle. I hate to see this become a partisan one side or the other. If both sides seem to really agree on this, it looks much more hopeful that we might be able to pass it this year. What are your thoughts?
Thank you, Senator Boucher. To answer that, when you look at in the big picture, from a pure dollar and cent, to eliminate the estate tax and keep the wealthier people in our state is obviously going to help us. No question about that at all, because dollars and cents, you're going to get more into the general fund, and that's going to help all of us for the various programs we all care so much about. Having said that, on the other hand, when you have a limited resources and you have to cut the cloth depending on what kind of cloth you have, when you allow the Social Security benefits to be deducted, you are impacting a larger group of people that don't have the amounts of the estate tax that would make a big difference. So yes, as we all know, unfortunately, when I was serving, they had the good fortune to be on the Finance Committee last year. We talked about our billionaires. I think if I remember correctly, 2 billionaires left our state last year and moved away. So we know the impact. We know the impact on our taxes, A, and in the fund, and B, more importantly or equally importantly, the impact on the towns and communities that they live in and spend their money. So when the estate tax, if we are able to match it to what it is at the federal level and raise it from where we are to that bar, would preclude these people from leaving us and going down to other states, which would be great. But if I have to pick and choose, once again, the same concept of winners and losers, I would say, given the limitations that we have from a budget point of view and facing the realities of life, I would do it for the general good and look at it from a Social Security point of view, and maybe the next step is look at it from an estate tax as well.
Well, thank you for that response. It's very helpful. And given that now we have the other side of the aisle finally coming on board with this idea, that maybe both sides then can make this become a reality this year in a bipartisan fashion. And I appreciate your guidance on it very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you,
Any other
Senator Boucher.
questions, comments?